Happy Finals Week. Having worked in a hospital for over 4 years, I hear some interesting medical stories, and I'd like to share one with you tonight. The story is one that I found in an article by Sharon Orange, and she tells it thus. A morbidly obese man came into the emergency room, and he was complaining of a rash around his stomach. And so the doctor's routine examination took a surprising turn when, after reaching and lifting the stomach up, a month-old turkey sandwich fell out from in between his skin folds. Needless to say, the moldy turkey sandwich was the cause of the mysterious rash. So we deal with a lot of surprises in the medical field. Unfortunately, some of these surprises aren't so comical, and oftentimes they're more serious. And I'd like to speak about one of those surprises today, and that's stroke. For those of you who don't know, stroke is a life-threatening disorder. It's characterized by loss of blood flow to the brain, and that can happen in different ways. The statistics of stroke are actually quite sobering. For example, every 40 seconds, an individual in the US suffers stroke, and every 4 minutes, a stroke-related death occurs. So we see that it's something serious, and looking out on the young population, you're probably thinking, well, do I really have to worry about this? And the answer is maybe not yet for yourselves. However, we are surrounded by people who are at risk for stroke, and so it's important to be aware. Tonight I'd like to talk about stroke in 3 different ways. I'd like to discuss the types of stroke, and then I'll go on to talk about the risk factors associated with stroke. And I'll conclude by speaking about the signs of stroke. So first, what are the types of stroke? There are 2. The first and most common is called ischemic stroke. And ischemic stroke accounts for about 87% of all stroke cases. And ischemic stroke occurs when the blood flow to the brain is actually blocked by either a large blood clot or by fatty deposits in the arteries. The second type of stroke is called hemorrhagic stroke. Hemorrhagic stroke is different than ischemic. What happens in hemorrhagic stroke is actually the blood vessels in the brain burst, leaking blood into the cranial cavity. So each of these is different, and they're both very severe. They each have different treatments. However, they do share a common set of risk factors, which I'll talk about right now. So what sort of things contribute to stroke or put us at higher risk for stroke? Well, there are 3 different types. There are things that we can't really do anything about. There are things that we have some control over. And finally, there are things that we can actually do something about. So what can we not, what are the things that we can't do anything about? Well, for the most part, they're heritable traits. So maybe there's a previous history of stroke in the family, or there's a previous history of diabetes in the family, or even just the fact that you're over 55 years of age. Nobody can change that once they're there, right? So these are things that are actually important for you to go and find out. I've learned about several things in my family history that I didn't know existed, and it's important to be informed as to your own health. Now, what are some of the things that we can do a little bit about? Well, these are medical conditions. Things that put us at higher risk of stroke, for example, are heart disease, obesity, and high blood pressure and high cholesterol levels. So those are things that we can somewhat treat. And finally, what are the things that we actually really have control over? Those are lifestyle choices. So, for example, at BYU, we have an honor code that includes as its premise following the gospel. We have the word of wisdom. And we're actually lucky because I'll tell you, the prevalence of stroke increases dramatically when you are using alcohol, when you're using tobacco. It also increases when you have a diet that is high in salt content or in cholesterol. So these are some of the ways that we can see that our honor code is actually improving our health, right? Our religious beliefs, they contribute to our health and well-being. So these are some of the risk factors that contribute to stroke. Now, we can't absolutely prevent stroke, so it's important to know what are the signs of stroke so that when it happens, we can be ready for it. And in the medical world, we use an acronym FAST, F-A-S-T, to help us know what are some of the signs of stroke and recognize them quickly. So let me go over this acronym with you. The first letter, F, stands for face. So a person experiencing a stroke, if you ask them to smile, will be able to smile on only half of their face. The other half of the face will droop or sag. This is because the brain areas affected by that part are damaged. The second letter in the acronym, A, stands for arms. So if you ask a person to extend their arms, one of them will drift downwards slowly. They won't have very good muscle control. And the third sign is speech. So if you ask a person who is experiencing a stroke to repeat a number of simple sentences, they'll often garble their words or slur them. And the last letter of the acronym T stands for time. And this is actually the most critical. During every minute of stroke, 2 million brain cells die. And those are brain cells you can't get back. The untold, the count of behavioral changes, all of the aftermath of stroke can be quite awful. So it's important, once you recognize any of these signs, to call 911 or to visit your emergency room to get that stroke taken care of in a quick manner so that your quality of life will be improved. So I've reviewed the types of stroke, ischemic and hemorrhagic. I've talked about the risk factors of stroke, including things such as medical conditions, heritable traits, and lifestyle choices. And I've concluded with the signs of stroke. In short, if you're experiencing a droopy face and your arm is drifting down, please visit the ER or contact 911 immediately. But if you have a rash around your stomach, please check for sandwiches before dropping by. Thank you.